Good morning, everybody, and welcome to COVID-19 Recovery for Faith Communities, Navigating Strategic Change and Finance Challenges. This is the Spring Preparedness Conference for the Faith Sector Community Preparedness Program at New York Disaster Interfaith Services, which is a program funded by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And this session is particularly for houses of worship. I'm sure most of you have been on Zoom before. Just a little bit of introduction. Your audio and video controls are by the icons on your screen. Please mute yourself whenever you're not talking so we can avoid any kind of background noise. And if you are experiencing technical difficulties, I'm here to help you. You can just write a note in the chat directly to me or to the group, and I will get there to help you. And you can also send questions via the chat. There'll be a question and answer section at the end of each of our presenters' workshops, and we'll catch up to any questions that have come in throughout the presentation at that time. I'm going to pass it over to Peter Geditis, our Executive Director and CEO at NIDIS, to say a brief word of welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I realize some of you are repeating and have heard these remarks before, and I apologize for that, but I want to welcome most especially our two distinguished presenters today, the Reverend Dr. Alfonso Wyatt and the Reverend Brady Funn. First, I want to acknowledge my colleague, Gabrielle Sclafani, who's the manager of our Faith Sector Community Preparedness Program, for organizing today's workshop series. Alfonso and I go back 20 years, having worked 9/11 recovery together and had many other opportunities to collaborate. So I knew he would be an excellent choice for leading our conversations today about the role of leadership in the face of change, and extraordinary change that we face as a city, a country, and the global community as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic and look towards the health and well-being of our nonprofit organizations and congregations. I think it's also important to point out that although congregations are centers of worship and religious learning, for many of us, they are the center of community life for many of the populations of our city, as well as the backbone of neighborhood social services across the city. So the health and well-being of our faith-based nonprofits and our congregations are essential to our recovery as a city. And with us today also is the Reverend Brady Funn, the third, who is, after his presentation this morning, I kind of felt like saying, I think we need Congressman Reverend Brady Funn to go fix some things in DC. But we had a great conversation this morning, a really interesting presentation from both these exceptional gentlemen. And I'm really looking forward to hearing this afternoon's conversation, and also welcome your questions, throughout the time we have together. I definitely want to also acknowledge the 67th Precinct Clergy Council, who's co-sponsoring our workshop series today, as well as the Mayor's Office, Center for Faith-Based Partnerships, and all the extraordinary work that is being done there. We're going to hear from two of those co-sponsors a little bit later when we take our mid-workshop break. But without further ado, I want to get us started. So I'm going to hand it back to Gabrielle. But thank you for being with us, all of you, and we will be recording this.
Thank you, Peter. I'm really looking forward to these presentations as well. And I'll pass it over to Reverend Dr. Alfonso Wyatt of the Greater Allen AME Cathedral of New York and Strategic Destiny.
Thank you. And thank you all that are on the call. It is a very exciting time that we find ourselves in, a time of change, a time that has exerted pressures on all aspects of our humanity and also on our institutions. And we're talking about the power of strategic change in changing times. Let's go to the next slide. One thing that we know about change is that it is ever present, and change has a way of changing. Even when we say change, we may not understand the full dimension of what is coming upon us or what is even leaving us. Sometimes change is happening around us and it's impossible, or we miss it. If we look at, take a historic look at change, I use the example of the dinosaur. They were not at the meeting when change was being discussed. They were not at the meeting and they did not change, and they're not around. I believe that that is not just a metaphor, but a reality that if houses of worship, and I know we have various world faith traditions on the line. So when I say houses of worship, that could be synagogues, ashrams, temples, you name it, it comes up under there. I'm not talking religion. What I am talking is strategic change. And no matter where you are, whether you pray with your eyes open or closed or don't pray at all, change will find you. So there's different reactions to change. Some people just like the way that things work. And why do they have to change? Some folk are rooted in past glory. You can learn from the past, but you cannot facilitate or ameliorate your future by living in the past. I told a person that was talking to me, I was doing a little executive coaching, and everything that the person was talking about was rooted in the past. And I told him that he reminds me of a person that got a parking ticket at a meter a year ago. And every day he comes back to the same meter with a quarter and the parking ticket. He wants to pay the parking ticket, put the quarter in the parking meter with the expectation that the ticket is going to disappear. That is the futility of living in the past. You can't change it. So organizations react to strategic change. And sometimes it's not always with a proactive eye. I brought in an example from the private sector. I'm going to use a different one. Toyota car manufacturing company was faced with change when a movement sprung up in the United States to buy American. Now, at the time in the 80s, the Toyota was better than American cars. But the American car companies thought that, well, one thing they can't change, they can't say buy American. So Toyota was in a quandary. There was change in the air. So somebody, I don't know who it was on the Toyota end, said, look, we make superior cars, we make them in this country. Why don't we move our manufacturing to the United States? And all of the foreign car makers followed suit. That's called thinking out of the box. If the answer is not in the box, you got to think outside of the box. In this time that we're in with the post-COVID-19 strategic change challenges, things will not be the same. This is a once in a 3 generation, once in 100-year issue that we're facing, challenge that we're facing. Issue is too small a word. And it has already changed much. Some of it we don't even know as of yet. And that's why I believe that I salute NIDIS and I salute the partners, 67 Precinct and the mayor's office. I salute you because the only way through this is going to be together and strategically. Next slide, please. So as we go forward, I want you to know that we have to cope with change. Change impacts our physicality, our mentality, our spirituality. Doesn't take away one's spirituality, but it makes you question every now and then. So every house of worship, every organization has a culture. You have to ask, what is your culture as it relates to change? And you can find that out by looking at the history of relating to change. How has change been greeted? What is the organizational culture of your house of worship, of your nonprofit organization? And that culture governs how business is carried on. I tell people that there's two organizations, houses of worship, if you will, or two organizations. The one you run and the one you think you run. The wider the gap between the organization you actually run and the one that you think you run, that's the space where things can fall, crash, and burn. I don't know if you've been in situations where you've had good intentions and bad results. What you wanted to do was glorious. What actually happened was not. Get as close together the organization you actually run and the organization you think you run. Narrow that space as much as you can through conversation, collaboration, through cooperation, and not through alienation. I had my alliteratives dusted off for that one. And also know that change impacts people. People make up institutions. People make up houses of worship. They are impacted by change, by the pressure that change exerts on the institution and on individuals. When change comes, titles may have to change. When change comes, practices may have to change. Change at first can be disruptive. Even if it's good, it can be disruptive. And in many instances, it's hard for folk to deal with that disruption. Next slide, please. How do you communicate change? It's not enough to say, well, things have changed and people can see it. That to me tells me that that house of worship and that leader is reacting to change. And generally we react with tactics. Tactics suggest the absence of strategic thinking and planning. Sometimes you have to use tactics, but tactics can never, ever be the main mode of how you move forward. So it's important to understand that you can't just one day come up and there's a different sign over your house of worship communicating the new. No, work with people. Information is generally transmitted about change, about anything, in open sharing. We hear a lot about transparency these days. And seems like the more we hear the word transparent, the more opaque life becomes. People need to know what the leader is planning and need to be involved in it and need information in order to fully participate. So open sharing is important. Don't forget that in times of either change or conflict or turmoil or upheaval, whatever words you want to use, it's important that communications be crisp and to the point and to be truthful. Because some people will resort when they don't have information, then we have the presence of inflammation. And those two things are different. And people resort to MSU when they don't have information. And I have to be very careful as a faith leader when they make stuff up. If you don't give me information, then I'm going to try to figure out where it's going, where we're headed, and I'll make stuff up, and that becomes true. Winston Churchill said that a lie can travel around the world before the truth got a chance to get out of bed and put its pants on. You don't want something to lead in an area that's not true, because now, instead of leading, you're doing damage control. And that's a thankless job, I might add. Some people said, well, it's on a right to know basis. And I would hope it's not the people that I have a right to know or want to know within a clique or a particular group. It never works that you can have information on this side for some people and some people on the other side without information, because they're going to realize that a preference was started. And if it's all hands on deck time, you don't want to create schisms within your own organization. And then some people believe in, I'll tell a few people, and they'll leak it out. When you're conscious that that's happening, that's what is called or can be called a strategic leak. Some people have made or have engaged in a secret to tell somebody that perhaps has favor or whatever, a secret before everybody else finds out. And what they don't know is that that person swore somebody else to secrecy and that person, and so on, like that commercial. Listen to me. Everybody got a best friend. Everybody's got somebody that they want to make sure, well, I got to make sure you know. Strategic leaks in my mind, I don't know. Open sharing. Next slide, please. There is a change formula. And I would hope that as you embrace organizational change, that this formula can be helpful to you. It comes from a book, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. When I was vice president of the Fund for the City of New York, we were tasked with helping New York City government to innovate. So we were working here. We were also working in Japan. We took city managers from New York, Chicago, LA, to Japan to meet their corresponding managers in Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. They're all sister cities, New York and Tokyo. And one of the formulas, and look at this formula. Let's say that an issue has come up and we got to deal with change. The D represents D times V times F must be greater than R. The D represents dissatisfaction with the present state. If we're on this side of COVID, there may be some things that worked on the other side that's not working now. And when I was in geometry, they said that what you do on one side of the equation, you must do on the other side. Some of us are just working one side of the equation, and generally it's our favorite side. It's the side that we have competence and confidence in. But it does not get to effective institution of change methodologies. What is the dissatisfaction with the present state? It is the reason why you want to move. And then the next times vision. What is the vision? Not that the leader has. The worst thing to do is to have a unilateral one-person view of the future and everybody else falls in line. Like it, leave it, lump it, whatever. That's not leadership. More like dictatorship, but that's another story. What is the vision? Now, there is the vision, T-H-E vision, and D vision. I'm not talking about D vision. We want to know what is the vision. What is the desired state 10 years from now? A leader should be forward looking. A leader should always have an eye on the present, but keep the other eye on the future. And then it goes times F, first steps. This is where things sometimes fall apart. What are the first steps that are needed to move towards and responding to change? And all of that, after you do all of that work, the work is not done. The next is that it must be greater than resistance. If there is forward movement, there's always going to be a countervailing force to push back. Resistance. And it comes in a variety of ways. No matter how it comes, there must be a plan for it. Most people think that just because they see resistance or they see or spot obstacles, that that's good enough. It's not good enough. There are some folk who are gifted, talented in spotting problems. What won't work, what can't work, what we tried and it didn't work. I call or have named or tabbed just for conversation purposes. I named those folk the PhDs of negativity. The PhDs of negativity. Now, I used to be quite upset with them until I heard somewhere in my spirit, don't be angry, help convert them. They have an ability to do analysis. Help them to do analysis that can result in making effective use of change. That is being strategic. Next slide. So colorful. Let's look at this, what's called a SWOT analysis. It's an assessment tool. It's an assessment tool that you can use on your own. There are some issues, concerns, you need a consultant. But this can help you look at your organization with a strategic look, not a nostalgic look, not a look that we're tied to because of tradition and time in the institution. Strengths and weaknesses are internally focused. On the external are opportunities and threats. Helpful are strengths and opportunities. Harmful are weaknesses and threats. What are your organization's strengths? If you are a not-for-profit, or you're looking to build, or you're looking to grow, what are the foundational strengths that support you? It's good to know. And it's good to ask other people, because he or she may see strengths that were heretofore not mentioned. On the other side, what are the weaknesses? And let me just say this, just in case I have to say it. Every organization, every leader, every institution, every house of worship has weaknesses. And the hard thing is either to act like one does not, or to ignore them, or to accept them. Got excited on that one. Or to accept the weakness as this is just the way that we are. And that becomes part of and informs the organizational culture. The organizational culture is that we won't walk on by. Thank you, Dionne Warwick. We will stumble on by. We will stumble over the impediments, and we will learn how to stumble gracefully. No, no, no. When I look at weaknesses, when I've done this in the past with flip charts, I would get a whole flip chart and a half of strengths and maybe 2 or 3 weaknesses. Don't be afraid to be critical. I tell people, be soft on people and hard on issues. Be soft on people, hard on issues, because all of this is relational. What are some opportunities external? You'll hear some of the initials PPE. You'll hear about grants. You'll hear about government that's contracting or looking, or opportunities to look at individual donor giving. All of these are opportunities. I get excited by opportunities. Opportunities that's there means that there's a way that can perhaps create direction and movement that has not been fully harnessed or even ascertained. Always look at your opportunities. You want to maximize opportunities and minimize threats. Threats are anything that can stop your forward progress. Threats are anything that threaten your viability or your organization's viability. Threats are obstacles that you did not create, but you must negotiate. The Harvard Business School operates on the case study method of opportunities and threats. But the next level for the innovative organization is asking this question, not just, oh, look at all of those threats. I would hope that somebody, and it doesn't always have to be the leader, that somebody would say, how do we turn threats into opportunities? How do we turn what is threatening us into an opportunity that can stretch us, that can help us grow? Always have that question, and always apply it when you meet a threat. It's through the opportunities that exist for those that are in not-for-profits that you can write proposals to mitigate, if not eliminate, your threats. It is what gives you direction. It allows you to know how and the flow of the organization. And if you are a not-for-profit, it also can tell you who to hire. If you are a visionary leader, I'm going to tell you that your gift, your strength can turn into a weakness, especially if you hire a visionary, a person who is supposed to be an implementer, but all they want to do is talk to you about visions. And nothing is happening. You have to know your organization. You have to know your house of worship. You have to take that honest deep dive and know who is on the team, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their opportunities to grow, and what threatens all of that. Next slide, please. Training. I do executive coaching, do training. If you're blessed to have the expertise in-house, people need to be trained. Everything cannot be on the job training. And especially now, since we find that we're in a complicated period. COVID-19 has exposed frailties and weaknesses and gaps, not just in the healthcare system, not just in the mental health care system, but also in houses of worship. And please know that there are people outside that may never come inside. That could be a threat, but the opportunity is to go get them, is to mobilize and go get them. You may need some training to do some things differently. Don't be that a magician type. I wanted to say Merlin, but I didn't want Merlin to be angry with me. Don't be the type of magician. I got a whole nother metaphor. The alchemist. The alchemist, it's not just the book, but there were people in the medieval times that professed that they could turn lead, base metals, into gold. We don't need leaders who espouse that they can take something that's of no value and make it valuable. We need training. People need to be trained. And there's nothing wrong with it. And as I said, if you have it internally, that's really good. If you have it externally, you have to go get training. There are people who it's their job to make sure that training is available. There's free training. You're going to hear about resources that are available. Please. And if you have to find a consultant, if what you're looking for is specific and you have to get somebody, please do that. We can't afford the time that it will take to stumble into a solution when one can be readily found. And make sure, and didn't say this last week, make sure that you and the circle around you are taking care of themselves. There are a lot of people who are burnt out, who have given as much as they can give, and they still are on the battlefield. If you have a food pantry program and the people are lined up circling your house of worship, your program, you can't say, I'm too tired to open the door. Take care of yourself. Never let it be said that the shoemaker's children have the worst shoes in town. Take care of home. Find people and find time not just to talk about the problems. Sometimes you just need time to reflect, not on work, but on you. I told some people, put yourself on your own agenda so that you can recharge your spiritual tanks. Cars will let you know when they're running out of fuel. They'll either beep, a light will come on, or if you paid a lot of money, the car may talk to you. Excuse me, you're running out of fuel. But our spiritual tanks, there are a lot of leaders that are running on fumes. And while sometimes it happens that way, that cannot be a successful or productive ongoing prospect. I just wanted to add that in. Change is going to knock on your door. Will you open the door and invite it in, or will you keep it outside and keep asking, who sent you? Change is going to happen. What will our response to change be? I thank you for the time. And now we're open for questions, comments, thoughts, or feelings.
If anything, thank you so much, Dr. Wyatt. I really enjoy the metaphors and images that you share to illustrate all of this important information. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself. You can also raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can type in the chat and I will read your question aloud to Dr. Wyatt. And we have about 10 minutes. So please feel free.
Gabrielle, I have a question for Dr. Wyatt.
Sure, go ahead.
And thank you, Dr. Wyatt. I sat through this twice, and it's even more outstanding than I thought. So thank you for the presentation. Question: looking at the SWOT model and the area of the W, the weaknesses. If weaknesses is in the area of leadership, and you discover that that's something that has to change, and part of that change might be asking individuals to step down, how do you deal with that?
Well, it depends on the context. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about, let's say in a not-for-profit, leaders are evaluated. One of the things that perhaps does not happen in the faith community, I'm just going to say that, but it could be other communities. Who evaluates the leader? And sometimes we don't have evaluation procedures, where we look at what's going on, how do we measure effectiveness, and the whole nine. On the not-for-profit side, there are boards. And one of the roles of the board is to supervise the leader of the organization. Now, if it's if the weakness or the deficit can be ameliorated by training, I think opportunities to help a person grow in the area of their weakness is important. But if it consistently hurts the institution, steps have to be made within the procedure and policy and practices of the institution. I hope that answers your question.
We've also got a question in the chat from Reverend Jermaine Green. What are some measurement tools for measuring resistance?
Well, the easiest one is the job being getting done. That's the easiest one. The other is attitudinal. What are people's attitude about what they're being asked to do and their ability to do it? So job performance could be another thing. I'm going for low-hanging fruit. You don't have to bring in Kinsey into your organization. If you have a goal, if you explain the goal, if the goal and the task have been given and there is no movement, something is resisting the change. Now, yes, there are a whole bunch of, you can go online and get tools. You can get that very busy monkey. I think his first name is Sergey, or is it Chimp? Well, anyway, you can go and get tools to get opinions out. But where the rubber hits the road is where does the process fall down? And it calls also for asking hard questions. I hope that was helpful.
I think it was. Peter, I see you that have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think I've seen this repeatedly in my disaster ministry. I think sometimes we have to recognize when we're going through a recovery period, sometimes the leaders that we've had that were effective leaders in peacetime, if you will, don't have the gifts and talents for crisis. And we have to be willing to be humble enough to recognize when we're not the right leader at the right time sometimes, but we also have to be willing to step up when we know that we're the right leader for the right times. And often I think in faith-based organizations, at least this was my experience in parish ministry, sometimes we pick leaders based on the fact that it's their turn versus whether or not they have the right skills. And at the same time, sometimes we need people based on gifts and talents that they have, but the skills that we need can be worked on. I'm particularly thinking about this as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we need different voices on our governing bodies, and yet we're not willing to raise up leaders from the voices that aren't represented, we're doing a grave injustice to our faith communities. So sometimes we need to raise up leadership, the right leadership at the right time, and sometimes we need to recognize when change is essential for the crisis of the time.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes because of favoritism or because of just really not wanting to hurt the person, the organization is being hurt. And no one is going to be a leader forever. And you're right, there are some leaders who are good with conflict. There are some leaders who like to have conflict. And there are some that are averse to conflict. And these times are calling for honest assessments. And while these words sound good, while SWOT, while the change formula, it's the human relationships the interpersonal relationships. It's that leader that doesn't like to cause trouble. It's that leader that may see trouble, but sweep it under the proverbial rug. It's that leader that loves trouble. And if there's not enough, he or she can create some. But how do you mitigate conflict? There's conflict mediation courses. There are ways to give tools. And then there's the recognition that I may not have all that I need in order to lead. I could find that competency within, but if I'm suspicious that people really want to take my seat, I'm not going to allow leadership to bubble up because it could be a detriment. And all of that is real, but we're not being honest, true, or loyal to the organization. I knew at a point that when I stepped down, I didn't step down because I couldn't do the job. I felt that it was time for others to step up and open up another door. It wasn't like I went out to pasture sitting on the front porch with some chocolate chip cookies and warm milk. No, there's other things. There's other options that's out there. I went on because that was a subject. And sometimes we feel that because we are people of faith, that the laws of excellence, of responsibility, and all of those other things, if you don't have it, pray for it until it comes. All right, a couple more and I think we'll be done.
Any more questions?
TK,
You. How are you doing?
this is my brother. I know y'all ain't gonna believe it, but this is my brother right there. How are you, sir?
I'm very fine. Thank you. If you can hear me.
I can hear
Great.
you.
Yeah. I mean, since you're there, I thought I wanted to come to see you how you're doing. So, but maybe thank you for the wonderful presentation as usual. And so maybe my question for me is after the coronavirus, somehow we're getting so busy, and the time is running so quickly. Do you have any advice for control the time? That it just it seems like really, I don't know, too fast the time goes. So how can I slow down my time?
Well, I think Dr. TK,
Yeah.
we got our doctorates at the same time.
Right. Same time. We graduate together. Congratulations.
Yes, we did. I haven't seen you since graduation. I think what we're going through is a rebound. We've been dormant, or we've been kind of in this twilight zone existence for 13, 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
And now that things are starting to bounce back, I believe that it's going to place some demands on leaders. Not forever, but just to kind of catch up to the speed of change. If change is moving faster than we respond, we're going to always be running behind it. We may have to run a little faster to get there, and then put in the controls and the systems that allow us to deal with change. And we still have to find time for ourselves. I've had to tell people who care about people that it's okay to care about yourself. And if you can't help you, you can't help anybody else. So as I know that through your tradition, meditation is very important. I want to still hear those bells, TK. I
Sure.
still want to think about our retreats that we've been on, that you've led. Maybe you're going to lead yourself on a retreat and just breathe.
Mhm.
I was breathing last night. I'm so happy to see you, my brother.
Well, thank you so much anyway. Appreciate it.
Yes. I love my brother TK. That's my boy.
Thank you for that question. I definitely resonate with that as well. Unless there's anything else burning, I am going to say thank you to Dr. Wyatt for a truly enlightening and informative presentation. I think that we all really enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you have any further questions, you can email me and Dr. Wyatt, if you wouldn't mind dropping your email address in the chat also in case anyone wants to reach out to you directly, that might be helpful. We're going to have a brief 5-minute break and come back exactly at 1:01. So y'all can use the restroom, have a drink of water, snack, whatever you need to do, stretch. And then we'll be back with a word from our government partners, a few words from Peter, and an excellent presentation on financial management and the importance of proper financial management from Reverend Brady H. Fun. We're going to get started. I don't see our government partners here yet. I know that they were coming from other meetings, so it might take them another minute to climb on. But Peter, if you wanted to share your remarks, I give you the floor.
And we can add them at the end
Sure,
if necessary. Again, apologies if this is a repeat for some of you that attended the morning session, but I do want to draw attention to some resources that are available both to your congregants as well as your institutions. But again, to emphasize that the fiscal soundness of New York families and the New York faith sector are inseparable. Our ability to continue to do good in New York is linked to the health, the financial health of families and congregations, as well as the congregations themselves and the social service ministries of the congregations that we're all connected to. To that end, on April 12th, the federal government opened the Federal Funeral Assistance Program. That information is on our Facebook page. You can Google it, of FEMA Funeral Assistance, and you'll be able to get the phone number. That provides up to $9,000 of financial assistance to families that have lost a loved one to COVID-19. Almost 52,000 New Yorkers have died from COVID-19, which is a devastating number, obviously. The other program, which I totally forgot, and I apologize to mention this morning, that is also coming online this month, this month being May, apologies, is the Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That will provide families with up to 12 months of rental arrears funding and 3 months of rental assistance forward. So a family could potentially secure as much as 15 months of rental assistance. There'll be a lot of publicity about it as soon as the program goes live, but there are dozens of faith-based and secular nonprofits across the city that will be administering that program, bringing financial security and housing security to the hundreds of thousands of families in New York that are facing eviction because of COVID related unemployment. And the third program that is still available, but it's only open a few more weeks, is the Federal Payroll Protection Program. And that is available to both houses of worship and faith-based nonprofits as well as secular nonprofits. And that program provides 2.5 months of payroll, 100% of payroll, and administrative costs, OTPS or whatever the term you use is. That would be rent, utilities, lease fees, telephone, internet, all of that sort of thing. And it is in the form of a forgivable loan. So you apply through your bank. If you secure the loan, you have a certain period of time to spend the funds, and then you have to report out on the funds. And as long as you spend the funds in accordance with the loan provision, that loan is then forgiven. And NIDIS has received payroll protection program funding, so I am familiar with the program. It's not child's play. You really do need to know what you're doing, you know, accounting wise. But that is also a resource available. And if you received federal payroll protection program the first time it was rolled out in 2020, you are eligible to receive it again. So it is not a one-off. You can apply both times to receive that assistance. So those programs are available. I don't want to waste any more time, but if you have any questions, you can address those to Gabrielle or myself. We're happy to get you additional information, and I'll turn it over to the very talented Reverend Brady Fun.
Just 1 second. I know that Lou Rivera from the Department of Health is on. The Department of Health is and Mental Hygiene is the contractor for the Faith Sector Community Preparedness Program. And Lou would like to say a few words.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's participating in this event today, taking the time to meet with all of us, our colleagues in the field here, and with NIDIS. I'd like to thank NIDIS for hosting this annual event and for their partnership in doing this work. This is a joint project that we know internally at the Health Department as the Community Preparedness Program. And we've had the opportunity to do this work now with NIDIS for about 5 years. So thank you so much to NIDIS for partnering with the Health Department to ensure that houses of worship and the faith sector and faith-based organizations, you know, understand how to prepare for and hopefully respond to emergencies, and also really understand how New York City government operates during an emergency. You know, so thank you so much for partnering with us with DOHMH over the last 5 years. I want to acknowledge that these 14 months have probably been one of the most trying times for many of us here in the city. You know, as Peter mentioned earlier, we lost a lot of people to COVID, and we lost a lot of people outside of COVID during times of COVID, which really didn't allow us to practice our mourning typically in the way that we would do through our faith, through community. And so this has been a very trying 14 months. And I just want to acknowledge all of the work that the faith sector has been doing, that faith-based or faith organizations have been doing to support their congregants, to support their clients, to support their staff. I can't imagine how difficult this must have been, asking you all to do your work in such a way that disconnects us from individuals, from our humanity in many ways. But nonetheless, you all stepped up to the plate. You all made it your mission to ensure that New York City residents, that your congregants, your staff, your clients were going to, you know, remain safe during this pandemic. So thank you so much for being creative and for being adaptive during this time. You know, I also just want to say that we are at a crossroads right now. We're beginning to get to the horizon of some of everything we've been through over the last 14 months. Businesses are reopening, regulations are loosening. However, I will reiterate, now is not the time to put our guards down. We actually must double down on our efforts to encourage our community members, your congregants, your constituents to get vaccinated. And if they elect not to get vaccinated, then to ensure that they continue to adhere to the core 4, which is social distancing, hand washing, face covering, and testing. So we we are obviously at a very different point than we were a year ago, but there's still a lot more work that needs to happen in and around getting through this pandemic. So again, thank you for all your efforts. And I will leave you with a quote that I like to use for myself, because I feel like oftentimes I was doing this during this response. But for those of you who have kids, this might be very familiar to you. But it is the quote, "Just keep swimming," by Dory from Finding Nemo. I often have to tell myself that every day when I wake up, just keep swimming. We're gonna make it through this. We're gonna get through this. And there's an additional quote that I'd like to leave you with, which is probably more appropriately my age or adult-like. And I would say this is a quote from Albert Camus. "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." And I really do think when this is all said and done, and we look back at those 14 months, that cold winter, we are going to see we're going to be able to really look back and see all of the resilience that the faith sector community had, and really take some lessons learned from that and apply it to preparing for emergencies moving forward. So again, I just want to say thank you for being here today, and thank you for Nidus for allowing me to share some words.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Lou, for all of your support. The FSDPP is a really great program, and we're happy to be able to be at the wheel. I'm now going to turn it over to Reverend Brady H. Fund III for a presentation on the importance of proper financial management. Take it away.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Lou Rivera, for your words. It's about 1:15. I'm going to bring this plane in about 1:50. So we have time, because I know we're scheduled to finish by 2. But I will be able to cover everything then. Peter touched on so many important things, and thank you, Peter, for the invitation to share and to serve with Nidus, and the great work that y'all are doing for the city. And thank you, Reverend Wyatt, for that wonderful presentation. My brother, my friend, my mentor. It was outstanding. What's interesting is that, Nidus has so many resources, and Peter talked about the different grants, the forgivable loan. And I just wanted to share with you that for nonprofits and for faith-based organizations, that more money is a great solution, but without proper financial management, you're just putting a Band-Aid on where you are right now. I know that this is not the most exciting thing to talk about, but I want to share a story with you that I had with faith leaders a couple of years ago. And we were talking about houses of worship, whether it was a mosque or synagogue. And one of the things that I mentioned to them was, I said to them, well, you're running a business. Well, that word business was like a 4-letter word. And they said to me, Reverend Fund, that's a secular word. We don't like using that. So I asked them a series of 10 questions, talking about, do you have a tax ID number? Do you have to file paperwork for the city to keep your nonprofit status? And just talked about payroll. Every answer was yes. And I said to them, well, if you answered yes to all of those, you are running a business. And I think that's a challenge for us as faith leaders to understand that we are leaders, and yes, we all believe in God and our respective faiths, whether we are running a nonprofit or not, a faith nonprofit, But the reality is that we are running a business, and proper financial management is the key to making sure that our business stays on the track of being successful. So just wanted to start this. One of the things about the nonprofit world and the faith-based world is, you know, we're one of the only industries that relies on donations for our income. And I want to we decide to use the word income because that's really what it is. For nonprofits, it's not just donations, but also grants. Some of you have filled out RFPs, some of you are in the process of putting the RFPs together. You know, and we're supported mainly by volunteers. We have good-hearted folks who work for us and with us to advance the mission. And one of the things that Dr. Wyatt pointed out in that there are some times where some of our volunteers who work with us, whether it's in your house of worship or your not-for-profit, is not trained. And most of them are not trained in financial management, unfortunately, also with a lot of faith leaders. Proper financial management is critical for success and the survival and also possible expansion of any organization, including houses of worship. The proper financial management that you're doing today is going to help you with your plans for tomorrow. If you're not doing proper financial management, and we'll talk about a few details about that, today it's going to be very difficult for you to expand or move in the future for your plans for tomorrow. What we have to start with, we have to choose the right people for the job. You might be a faith leader, you might be an executive director of a nonprofit. You want to make sure that you're choosing the right people for the job, especially when it comes to managing finances. There are individuals in your houses of worship or in your nonprofits that might have an accounting background. Some of them with bookkeepers, statistics. Those individuals are individuals that you might use as a pool to choose from for those individuals that you're going to trust in managing your finances. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe you have a small organization, possibly a fiscal conduit. And for some of you, this is a review, but a fiscal conduit is a larger organization with a sound financial or business office, financial management office. They will manage your finances for you. They will do your payroll. They will cut your checks for you. Normally the fee is about 10% administrative costs, but that could be an option for you as well until you grow. And you will be on the path of growing if you instill proper financial management. These are some of the needs. Projected yearly budgets. How much do you project you're going to bring in by the end of 2021? Well, it's the fourth month, so we're talking about 1/3 of the year already. You need to be able to look back, 2020, 2019, see where you were in April of 2019, compare that to where you are now. See where you were in 2019, 2018, compare that to where you are now, because that's going to help you move forward in your organization. Projection of revenue. Those who have houses of worship, how many individuals do you have? How many folks are given? You should be able to track those things and see the giving trends in your organization. Sometimes people move away. COVID-19, unfortunately, a lot of individuals have passed. Some of the individuals have passed in your organization that were some of your main donors. That's going to affect you financially this year. You should have an organized system to receive and record income. QuickBooks, something as simple as Excel, which comes with a Word package, and Microsoft. These are the things that'll keep track of your income, because you're going to be able to need that. You should be able to tell anyone who's coming in where you are financially, who's given, how much income your organization have brought in. A yearly financial schedule of assessments, yearly. You should be analyzing and assessing what you did in 2020 right now. If you haven't done it already, you need to do it now. Some individuals have done it at the end. Usually you do it in January of the the prior year. So for 2020, you should have done your assessment in January of 2021. How much have you brought in? What were the trends? And the financial schedule of assessments is not just about income. It's also about salaries. If you have a faith leader, whether it's a priest, pastor, whatever the title is, how much did you pay this person? You know, if you have staff, how much did you pay them? How much did you give out as gifts to volunteers? So you do a yearly assessment, but what makes that easier is that you do a weekly expense schedule. We should not be paying our bills by happenstance or when they come in the mailbox, but we should have a schedule of payments. You should know when Con Ed, National Grid, when those things are due, and you should be able to schedule those things according to how your income comes in. Two main accounts, business checking and savings. The business account, that is your active account. That's your operating account. The savings account, you want to make sure you can put money away because you have vision to expand your organization. And always a debt reduction plan. I pastored a church in Yonkers and now I'm in Harlem. And the official board will tell you one of the first things I did is let me see the finances. The finances of the organization not only tells the story of the organization's priorities, but it also lets you know whether you are on target for meeting your mission. And once you do that, you start to look at the debt that you have and you begin to put a plan together for debt reduction. Debt reduction plan you do not put it together when you're in a time of crisis. You're running your debt reduction plan day by day every year, where you can target a date where you're going to pay these loans off, you're going to cut down on your mortgage, cut down on whatever expenses you have. If you bought equipment, if you are a soup kitchen or a community kitchen or a feeding program, how much have you been spending? You know, with the partners in the city harvest, the food bank. A lot of this food is free. It's in-kind donations, but you also have to manage that as well. How many in-kind donations are we going to get? How many people can we serve? What can we cut down? Financial assessment. One of the greatest questions is, where are you right now? Tell a story. One of my favorite things in a hotel is going to the hotel and looking on the back of the door and seeing that map with the little dot on it that says that you are here. Let you know where you are in case there's a fire, where the exits are. You need to see where you are right now. Total liquid assets. How much do you have in your checking? How much do you have in your savings? Those are the only two vehicles that you should have that contains cash, that's liquid. That means that if you are a small faith-based organization, and some faith-based organizations do it, they have a box where they store money. There are too many liabilities with that. One is theft, the other is fire. If there's a fire in your church, you'll lose all of that. The other thing too is that there's no accountability when you don't put it into an account. Pledges. How many folks have pledged for donations this year? You had 100 last year, maybe this year might be 50. COVID-19 affected everybody and really impacted folks financially. Grants, Dr. Wyatt touched on this. There are 5-year grants. You might have got 20,000 for the last 5 years. This is the last year that you're going to get that $20,000. What happens if you don't get that in 2022? How are you going to operate without that 20,000? And for some organizations, 20,000 is a lot of money. Rental income guaranteed for the fiscal year. Some of you have houses of worship where you're renting to individuals. You might be a nonprofit that has a building that's also renting to another tenant. Is that guaranteed for the next year? Because remember, they're also going through changes as well. And your total estimated income for the upcoming year. In January, you should be able to look at what you did in 2020, look at where you are now, assess everything and see, okay, I got a budget of $80,000. Last year we had 125,000. What are we going to have to change? You don't want to be surprised when you cannot run a program or you don't have enough to cover something. You need to do your assessment now. Total liabilities. How many loans are outstanding? Do you have a mortgage? Are there vendors, where you are buying equipment for your feeding program and you have outstanding invoices, you haven't paid them yet. These are the things that you need to assess so that this way you're not surprised. This year is going to make all of us, I as a pastor, then make some very tough decisions. Programmatic changes. What can't we afford? What are the main programs that we want to continue to run, and what programs that we have to shut down for a while? It might just be for a season, and maybe we could bring it back in 2022. Also, programmatic changes. What programs need to be sunset? Maybe we should not be doing this anymore because the need is not in the community. These are difficult decisions because in both the nonprofit world and the faith world, we become attached to what we did. We've been doing this for 25 years. How are we going to let go of this now? Well, the fact of the matter is the population that we were serving in our community, they're not there anymore. So we need to shift our money to another area. Are loans or refinancing a possible solution? If you cannot get your last 3-year financials, as a banker, it was heartbreaking telling nonprofits that, well, I need to see your financials for the last 3 years. Well, we don't have those. You're not going to get a loan without that. 3 years financials mean that you would have to give your financials up to this date, April 28th, 2020 and 2019. And you can hire an accountant to do that. You just have to give them the records. All it is an asset and liability sheet. Total assets, what you have in the bank, what grants all the income that's coming in, your liabilities is what you owe. And that financial statement you would have to give for 2020, 2019, and also for this year. Is it time to merge with another organization? This is a tough decision. If your organization looks like it's not going to make it, but you still believe in the vision, maybe talk to a larger nonprofit in that area and talk about merging with them until you're able to go on your own again, if that's possible. You don't want the vision to die. You don't want everything to just close out. But merges with nonprofits this year is something that is a very, very good solution for smaller nonprofits who are not going to make it. If you own your own facility, Is a development deal a good choice for your organization? I'm just going to touch on this briefly because frankly, the thing about it is this: if you are not managing your finances properly, if you cannot show 3 years of financials and you have been not tracking your records, the reality is that you're probably not in position for a development deal anyway. Talk about it briefly and then we'll move on. House of worship, nonprofit, that 100 by 300 foot lot that you're in, that is gold to a developer. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for horizontal and they're looking vertical. How wide can they build? How far can they build up? That's money for a developer. Developers choose properties based on what the yield, what their profit could be according to the size and the square footage and the air rights. Potential benefits for houses of worship: you might get a new building out. You might get a new feeding program building, brand new, everything, turnkey, as they put it in the agreement, where they'll put everything in there, state of the art, depending on how you do your deal. You might get residual income. They might pay you a percentage of the money that's coming in. Great deal. Some of the benefits: cash paid by developers. They might give you a large lump sum up front. You can pay off your loans, your mortgage, your outstanding debt. That's great. These are some of the drawbacks. A poorly negotiated deal. Too many houses of worship have lost their land in these deals because the reality is that you are selling your land. They are giving you a new house of worship, a new building, but you've lost your land. The land that you've had for 35 years, you need to really think about that, some even longer. You are not the owner of that land anymore. Your developer is. Poorly negotiated deal. Too many houses of worship have been taken advantage of through this. Not being in proper position to enter into a development deal. 3 years financials is what the Attorney General of New York State and the courts are looking for. You go into a development deal in May, you got to show your financials for April, all the way for this year, 2021, 2020, and 2019. And if you have not been doing that, there is no way that you can enter into a deal. That's why it's really important that we have to understand as faith leaders, as CEOs and executive directors of nonprofits, we are running a business, and one of the ways to keep our mission on track is to make sure that we have proper financial management. Updated property appraisal might cost you anywhere between $1,200 and $2,000 to get your property appraised. You need to understand the value of your property. Do not let the developer give you an appraiser. Hire your own appraiser. Get a good attorney who has experience with development deals. You want an expert, you want an attorney, but you want to make sure that they know about developing deals as well. And then you have to have a conversation with your organization. You want to make sure that your organization is on board with what you're doing. Because if you are the leader and you make this decision yourself and your folks were not on board, you're going to have some headaches. There's going to be a lot of problems going forward. Remember, this is part of your legacy. Make it a good part of your legacy. So we have a financial assessment, but it also is coupled with a needs assessment. Remember what our goal is, our mission is, whether you're a nonprofit feeding program, we want to feed 100, 200, 300 people a week. We want to meet the needs of the people, making sure they get nutritious food. Are we improving their lives if we're houses of worship? Are we meeting the people's needs, not just within our doors, but also those folks living around us? Understand the house of worship that is in the community is trying to do their best to meet the needs of those folks in their community, even if they never join their house of worship. That's what our mission is. So an effective assessment is essential to gathering information. First of all, the amount of all the operating bank accounts, what amount is in there? Because remember, you're going to need funding, you're going to need income to be able to do these programs. Who are the people you're serving? What is the ethnic makeup of the neighborhood? Sometimes it's good to just take a walk in your neighborhood at different times. You want to be able to see who is trafficking through your neighborhood. Are you in a neighborhood that's transient where people are just moving through, going somewhere else? All right. Are you in a neighborhood where there are individuals who are just really kind of homebodies? You want to know who these individuals are, because that's who you're going to be serving. What is the median income? The median income will tell you what kind of jobs and how much income these individuals are bringing in. That's going to help you also with your needs assessment in terms of meeting people's needs. If you have people who are below the poverty level, maybe your organization needs to do financial literacy. Maybe they need a feeding program there. Maybe they need a community kitchen. Are they owners? Is your organization in an area where there are homeowners? Or are they renters? How many shelters are living in or are in your immediate vicinity? Because that's going to affect your needs assessment. What other resources already exist in the area? You got a vision for this great feeding program. You want to open up a community kitchen. You choose the location. But within a 1 mile or 2 mile radius, there are 10 other programs. Is that where you want to set up your program? And if the answer is yes, what is going to be the difference between yours and the other 10? One of the things I did when I worked in emergency food is we talked to individuals who were serving. They were only a few blocks away from each other. Bring those individuals together, and what they did was they set up a community schedule where some served on Monday, some served on Tuesday, some served on Thursday. They worked in a collaborative, they worked together, and they met the needs of the community, and they all existed. Because if you have 3 programs on the same day at the same time, individuals are going to make a choice as to which ones they're going to go to. Is it a startup or is it a collaboration? Maybe you have a great vision, but there's a larger organization that is doing something that you're not doing. Maybe you want to collaborate with them. A lot of individuals have done that. They've collaborated, they've merged, they used the fiscal conduit of that organization, so they had their finances managed properly, and it was a great partnership. There's no shame in collaboration. Sometimes you might need to do that and make it for a while, and then eventually go on your own. Citydata.com, one of my favorite sites, gives you the demographic information in any area of New York City and across the United States. We just did the census. I haven't been on there, so I don't know whether it's been updated yet. But you can also go back the last few years. You can get the demographics of your neighborhood for 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017. And why do you want to do that? You want to do that because that will show you the trend. It'll tell you how many folks drive to work from that area. It details everything. The ethnic background of folks. And when you see those numbers changing, understand that that change usually continues. So even though you don't know 2020 yet, you can look at the last 3 or 4 years and it'll tell you, it'll give you an idea of where you're going. You want to make sure that you're serving individuals and meeting the needs of the people who are living in your area right now. And if that's changing, you might also have to change how you're servicing them. And the reality is, this is necessary no matter what faith tradition or unique community identity. This needs assessment is something that is done every year, not just during COVID-19. As we get through this crisis, you need to do this every year because our communities are changing and you want to make sure you're in position to meet the needs of the people who are with you, even within your own houses of worship. You got to do a needs assessment to make sure you're meeting the people's needs in your house of worship. Those individuals who have community kitchens and feeding programs, you want to make sure that the food that you are serving, the people eat. I was visiting the program and the program was making, they said they made the best grits and eggs and sausage for breakfast. And they were so upset because nobody was eating it. Well, that's not what their diet was. You have to find out what the people eat and prepare that. You might make the best grits, eggs, and sausage east of the Mississippi. That's not going to help individuals who don't eat that. You got to meet the needs of the people. And the real talk is what we did or what we are doing now, is it still relevant post-COVID-19 world? One of the things that faith leaders are discovering is there's a whole population of individuals who would rather Zoom than come to a house of worship. What's going to happen when we go back in? Are we going to forget about those folks? Or are we going to form some type of hybrid where we can serve both communities? Some folks are very comfortable Zooming. How are we going to continue to meet their needs? If you're a not-for-profit, what you're doing now might change once you get back into your building, and some of you already have, and seeing that the community has changed. How are you going to reach them? Post-COVID-19, it's a different world now. What are we going to do in this new reality that we're in right now? That's all I got. It's 1:44. Gabrielle, I think we're good.
We are doing great. We've got 16 minutes for questions and conversation, which is really, really excellent. Thank you again for a very generous and informative presentation, Reverend Brady. And again, folks, you can write your questions in the chat. You can unmute yourself. You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Anything goes in terms of how you make it known that you have a question, and we'd love to hear from you.
I could stop the screen share now.
Yes, sure. I'm seeing from Rodolfo, oh, very enlightening, he shared, thank you. And I'm pretty sure that this is a rhetorical question, but from Teresa, we have this comment, that is truth, are we relevant? And I'm pretty sure everybody in the church, certainly the mainline church, is asking that question now, and there are a lot of different answers to it in my book.
Yeah, I think that, you know, one of the ways to do it is with an assessment. And even if you do an in-house assessment, begin to talk to your leaders, begin to talk to those individuals within your houses of worship. and ask them, is what we're doing relevant now? And what would you like to see? Sometimes, and I think Reverend Wyatt talked about it with SurveyMonkey, one of the things that we might have to do is we might have to canvass again, where you go to a community center, where you go to a senior citizen, or you go even the old school door to door, and just ask your community, what would you like to see? How can we help you? And the great thing about it is that when you do that, you get buy-in from the community as well. And also, you get an idea of what people who are living around you are asking or telling you what their need is.
I don't know how many folks saw this, but the US, New York lost a congressional seat by 89 people. If we had counted 89 more New Yorkers in the census, then we wouldn't have lost that seat. And Nidus shared this on our social media. And I think that that is a really important example of how important assessment is, because it has real world implications.
Right. And one of the things, a lot of the houses of worship, we did a poll, see how many folks were registered. And sometimes it's a matter of, like you said, Gabrielle, a lot of folks, it's not just electing someone. It's about doing the census and understanding the importance of the census and what the implications are if everybody doesn't fill it out. So like you said, that's going to end up impacting us. And unfortunately, some of the smaller nonprofits and houses of worship is going to impact a lot of us the most.
Absolutely, because we have less fat around the edges and need to really be light on our feet and respond. We have some comments. Teresa commented that it's very informative and thought-provoking, that assessment is definitely needed. Thank you. Sharon asked about the website, which Peter commented is city data. I think that's .gov. Is that right? Citydata.gov. And Myra asked whether there is a generic pastoral assessment questionnaire available or if it is need specific.
I think that you can actually go on online. There's a lot of assessments that are available. And what you can do, Myra, is you can use that as a template and then actually modify it according to what your needs is, or the things that you're trying to, the information that you need. So you can always modify it to your uses, what would help you out.
Brady, I'm curious if you have recommendations on how a congregation can choose a treasurer or finance committee with the right skills to suit the needs of that congregation.
I do. I'm going to. We need to interview folks. We need a formal interview process, just like we would if we were interviewing someone for a job. And that's asking specific questions in terms of what your knowledge is. Some people, Peter, how I just want to serve. Or what are you good at? And the thing about the treasurer position, that is such a key position for the success of the church. No matter how great your vision is, and we touched on it, if you don't manage your finances well, you're not going to be able to do that. So, I think that, and you can go online as well and just get a list of interview questions, tailor them to what you want, but you want somebody who has experience. You want somebody who, knows how to use an Adam machine. It sounds really fundamental, but there are a lot of individuals that don't know how to do that in certain houses of worship. So yeah, you can go online and get that information and then tailor it to the needs, and that also that person should be introduced to the board if you have a board, Yes, and there's no crime in a house of worship to asking someone to bring in their resume. So
That is definitely sound advice. Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Reverend Brady in the audience? Comments, reflections?
Did Nancy join?
Nancy did not join. She ended up on an emergency call. So Nancy Pascal is the new director of the Mayor Center for Faith-Based and Community Partnerships. They did partner with us on getting out the publicity for this series of workshops today. We're really grateful for that. And Nancy was on our earlier session to plug some of the work that the Mayor Center is doing, and particularly the work surrounding mental health, like the NYC Well number, which NIDIS encourages folks to get acquainted with and to use in mental health crises. So she regrets that she cannot be here with us at this moment and sends her regards to everybody. We have a comment in the chat. Thank you, Reverend Brady, for a thorough and concise outline for financial growth in houses of worship. My sense is that the presentation was so thorough that folks are still kind of chewing on it, and that questions will come up probably after we log off. You are welcome to email Reverend Fun. He put his email address in the chat. That's bhfun3@aol.com. You're also welcome to email me. You should all have my email from the publicity, and I'll throw it in the chat as well. And I'll make sure that we direct your question to the right person. I know we got some questions at the beginning after Peter spoke about some of those federal grant programs. So those were specific questions that I'm going to look into, and I took down your names. If you did register through Eventbrite, then I have your email. If not, I'll find a way to find you. Everybody will be getting an email from me tomorrow saying thank you and including a link to our evaluation. And if you fill out the evaluation, you'll automatically be emailed a copy of the PowerPoint slides, as well as a link to the video of today's presentation. So you can watch it as many times as you need. You can also share it with your colleagues who might be interested. That is all that I have for you. I'm very, very appreciative to Dr. Alfonso Wyatt and Reverend Brady Fun for the time that they took today and their excellent presentations and the information they shared and their generosity of spirit. I'm also grateful to my colleagues, Peter Goditis, our Executive Director and CEO, and our communications person, Katerina Minrick, has also been on doing some behind the scenes work. So I want to thank her. As well as Lou and the entire team at the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. I would say that this was a really successful spring preparedness conference, despite the adverse circumstances of still not being able to be together in person. NIDIS does put on a fall summit to sort of supplement our programming, and we're really hoping that this year we'll all be back together in one room, fully vaccinated and safe. Might not happen. I'm getting a ooh from Peter. I hear that, I see that. But at the very least, I think we can dream about this time next year being together. And I appreciate all of you from the bottom of my heart, and please stay in touch, as I will be in touch with you.
And before we leave, if we could express our gratitude to NIDIS, to Gabrielle, and to my brother Peter. Now, in the desire to have fun, there's a little reaction button down there. I want you to go there and put a reaction in. Yeah, look, come on. This we do have control over. Yes, indeed. Look, nice.
Oh,
oh, so much love.
Feel. Yes.
So that's better.
Like all things in life, catch a quick glimpse because it fades. So at any rate, I do want to thank you. I want to thank you for the excellence in how you do and have done. I mean, from the time that we met during 9/11, it's just always been up top on the top shelf in terms of how you run your business. When will the recording be available? I have a number of people that couldn't make it, so you'll let me know.
Tomorrow, it'll be available tomorrow.
Ooh, I'm glad I said thank you. All right. Well, I'm saying goodbye. I'm
Good
used
afternoon,
to the
everyone. Take good
benediction.
care. Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless
you, Peter.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Gabrielle.
you, everyone.
Peter.